Milos, it is so nice to meet you. I want to first congratulate you on this brand new recording that you've put out, Moon and the Forest. Amanda at Crossover Media sent me the files and I've been listening to the CD. It's just a wonderful, wonderful disc. So big congratulations. I'm sure it's going to do very, very well.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Mhm. So there are two concertos on the CD that are written for you. Why was it so important for you to have new concertos written for guitar? Why was this
When
important
it
to you?
comes when it comes to new repertoire, I feel that ever since I began recording, I really was working on finding a way to inspire composers of our time to write for the guitar. And I felt that the area of the repertoire that really needed most attention from my own experience of playing was in the terms of the concertos. When it comes to guitar concertos, I think very often composers are a little bit scared to write for the guitar because guitar is a very soft, very intimate instrument. And so often composers and orchestras are concerned that the orchestra is going to overpower the guitar and to drown it. But I and as a result of that, not many pieces get programmed into orchestral seasons and into the big festivals and so on, apart from the Rodrigo.
Yeah, the
So I
concert.
have
Yeah,
the Concerto de Aranjuez,
Uranus.
and
Yeah.
when I recorded that concerto with Yannick Nézet-Séguin and London Philharmonic in 2014, what followed was this incredible roller coaster of playing with the best orchestras in the world, and that was really really amazing because when you are a classical guitarist, that's not a given. That's something that is very very special.
Yeah.
But whenever there was a discussion on what to do next, maybe a couple of concertos come into a conversation. But I was thinking like I would love to have new pieces, modern pieces. I would like to have like to work with composers whose music I personally like and enjoy. And then came all these wonderful opportunities, and I'm thrilled that Howard Shore and Joby Talbot came up with beautiful pieces that I premiered over the past couple of years, and then we were very lucky to be asked by Decca to as part of my releases and my commitment to recording with Universal Music, release an album with two new concertos and two new transcriptions, and having new music out there is something that's very important to me because I really believe in new music, and I believe that every time we have something new written, we are pushing the boundaries a bit further and like creating something for the future generations.
Yeah, it sort of leads to the next question. I want to start with the Joby Talbot piece, Ink Dark Moon. I was reading the notes and I was listening to this CD, and it's not your typical orchestration for a guitar concerto. For me, one of the things that I noticed, especially in the third movement, was he wrote brass and percussion parts to accompany a guitar player. It's sort of unheard of. But I also know that one of the things that you thought about doing was having yourself mic'd and then having some speakers put into the orchestra. Can you talk about that a bit and how that
So
worked?
so what I always thought was a great shame is that when you go to be a guest for a week with a great symphony orchestra, and you have a couple of performances, they do the overture and then it's the concerto and then it's the symphony. So they do the overture and then before the concerto half of the orchestra just disappears because
Right.
the conductor thinks that you will get overpowered, and even if there is a bit of amplification, it's always done so carefully and everyone is so incredibly scared that it's not going to sound natural, and there's all this stigma about this, and it drives me mad because it is not necessary. So I thought, because even some concertos work without actually using amplification, but it's just that human ear always gets, uh, when you listen to a violin concerto even, so often that there are parts in that concerto that are overpowered, and where the violin becomes part of the texture of the orchestra. But as long as the themes and all the main parts are audible, then everyone's fine with it. But then for some reason, with one of the quietest instruments of all, people are obsessed that they can't hear it. Um, so it's always the same story, and I just thought like the way to overcome it is if I really take responsibility to myself and say my idea is to actually, Joby, write a piece for me, knowing that I'm going to amplify it in such and such way where it's going to sound completely natural. And as a payback, please give me a full symphony orchestra.
Right.
Because at the end of this concerto, I want to feel like my dear friend Yuja Wang after she's finished with her rack tree.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want some sort of timid ending or something that is going to just, people are going to say, oh, it sounds lovely. Because you work really hard when you are on stage and you want people to say more than it sounds lovely. So, he said, okay, you want fireworks? I'll give you fireworks. So what he wrote to me is this incredibly symphonic piece, and a piece where guitar gives an idea, and then that idea is pushed into other instruments, and very often you don't even know if it's the guitar you're hearing or if it's like some brass somewhere or a woodwind or a harp, and the strings pizzicato and the rhythms. And then in the third movement he builds it up so far that at the end of it, you're like it's almost like you're breaking your fingers and your nails, and it feels so good. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
oh my god, I'm completely in love with that piece.
Um, it, it, one of the things I was thinking about is, did you feel like you had more control over the bus with the amplification in the orchestra? And by the bus, I'm talking, the orchestra is the bus. I very often find with guitar concertos, the orchestra members are sometimes struggling to hear the guitarist, but like now that there were speakers in the actual orchestra, do you feel like you had a little bit more control over the
Yeah.
orchestra playing along with you?
Yes, absolutely. But I have used the same technique for the Aranjuez and for the Villalobos, for Castelnau Tedesco, for all the concertos that I have performed in concerts.
Really?
And it's just something that always works. And the key is to amplify the guitar just as much so that it's natural, that you don't distort the sound, because there's nothing worse than amplifying the guitar through the speakers above the stage and then
Right.
hearing the guitar sound come from above and hearing the orchestra sound from below. It's like complete mismatch, but that's too often done. And I think it creates a completely wrong impression.
Mhm.
So the way that I do it is just very, very simple. It's like the speakers are around the players. They give players the sound. Especially woodwind struggles to hear. So you also the angle of the speakers, but you just have to make sure that all the sound comes from within the shell of the stage, and that it then gets pushed onto the audience.
Mhm. I want to just quickly talk about the title of the Joby Talbot concerto. It's called Ink Dark Moon. Where
Mm.
does the title come from?
So the title came after he finished writing the piece, because uh, he, when we were working on it and we were really intensely exchanging ideas and talking, and we became such good friends through the process. He's an incredible person and really talented individual. It's incredible the kind of ideas that come out. That's why I admire composers so much, because unlike us instrumentalists, we have to reproduce the same thing in different ways again and again. And it's like with composers, it's always something new. And with Joby, it was so many ideas, and it was like writing an opera for the guitar. It was this every single emotion, every single color and texture, and it just builds and builds and builds and changes shape. And then in one conversation, I said to him, Joby, this really reminds me of like the moonlight, and how sometimes it's very light and how it intensifies, and how the phases of the moon are changing, and he said, you're so right, because um he said that my visual idea of his music influenced him in finding that title. So he used a title that was a title of a Japanese poetry collection. And it was just like a perfect title. And I know that he had to ask for permission to use it, and the poet was thrilled to borrow it to us. But I just think Ink Dark Moon, it just
Yeah.
gives you so many things to play with in your imagination, and the piece definitely does exactly
Mhm.
that.
The other concerto on the disc, and as a Canadian, we should talk about it. It's a great piece. Is this concerto by Canadian composer Howard Shore called "The Forest." Now, uh, it was recorded and performed by the National Arts Centre Orchestra in Ottawa. My first question, as a Canadian, is what did you think of Ottawa, and how was it working with the NAC?
One of my favorite trips are always to Canada. Because I find Canada to be so incredibly welcoming and calm. And it is because I live in London for the last 21 years, and I find it to be the best of the world of the world, like we have it here in London and the world of North America. It's like somewhere in this perfect golden middle. And I have over the years made um, very, very close friends that are from Canada, living abroad and in Canada. And I'm always happy to go there. And playing with this orchestra was incredible, because it's an orchestra where people really, really love what they are doing.
Mhm.
And when they are on stage, there is an incredible sense of support and no judgment, and love for what we are creating together. So I remember that week with the National Arts Center Orchestra and Alexander Shelley, who's a dear friend of mine, in Ottawa, as one of the nicest weeks of my professional life.
Oh,
Howard was
nice.
there as well, and he came, and we had rehearsals and dinners and talks and late nights and sleepless nights, because
Yeah.
there was a lot, there's a lot of pressure on me when I'm performing something new.
Mhm.
And but it was incredible, really. And Ottawa is a beautiful place,
Yeah. Yeah.
very special. I remember staying in some incredible place, which like an old castle, and and all those old British buildings, and it's a very special place, really
Mhm.
incredible.
Absolutely. I've been there many times. It's excellent. Mhm.
Where are you from?
Well, I'm from Winnipeg, but
Winnipeg. Mm,
I spent my summers when I was in university working in Ottawa. So
okay.
yeah, I know Ottawa very, very
I
well.
discovered some really good restaurants there,
Oh
like
yes.
really good food. Loved
Mhm.
it.
Uh, back to the Shore Concerto. Here the orchestration is much thinner. It's much
More classical, I think.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
more classical. Did you talk with him about how to write a guitar part that was idiomatic for the guitar? I mean, when I think of Howard Shore, I think of these big, epic
Yeah.
film scores that he's so well known for. Did you and he converse about how to write a guitar concerto that would actually be effective?
We had so many conversations, and it was for me, first of all, it's a huge honor to have a piece written by someone like Howard Shore, because his music has been present in the lives of so many millions of people through all the scores and through all the films, and it's always so incredibly powerful. His music, it's just this volume of sound and texture, um, and I just thought, like, I would love to have a concerto where I can hear the classic Howard Shore, but where I can hear that lyricism and that um, imagination, and those moving pictures, and all of that inside my head. um, I never wanted to lose that. And in the beginning, we had so many conversations about how to achieve that, how to do that. I was trying to inspire him by, sharing with him some repertoire that I love. And he came to one of my concerts in New York City one time and listened to how I play live, and all of that, and try to incorporate all those little echoes of inspiration into the piece. Even some music, I also talked to him a lot about Montenegro, where I'm from, and this incredibly dramatic landscape and the forests there, and the sort of depth of the nature. And because he's Canadian, you're Canadian, you know what you're talking about. Nature is so important to us,
Of course. Yeah.
and it's a and then he went off, and and he was writing a piece, and 9 months later, I was presented with a score, and it was now up to me to make the guitar part work, and to make it really playable and to make my choices of like fingering and finding the place on the guitar. But I was so touched how while reading it each time and while in the process of learning it, I was discovering new things, and I was discovering these little quotes and echoes. There is even a little quote from the Aranjuez concerto in that piece. There is a little quote of some Montenegrin songs that I told him were sung to me by my grandmother when I was a child. And
Oh, wow.
so it's a very, very personal piece, and there is so much below the surface. Um, and at the same time, it's a very classical concerto. It's like there's an orchestra. It's not a too huge orchestra. It's not a small orchestra, but it's like a proper orchestra, and the guitar part that just keeps going, and it's technically very, very challenging. Um, but somehow it really falls into this magical Howard Shore, and I feel very, very lucky to have that piece in my repertoire now.
Milos, we're out of time. This has just been great. Thanks so much for spending the time with me. Like I say, the disc is amazing. I'm sure it will do very well. It comes out on April the 30th. And one quick question: what are you going to do once the CD's released on April the 30th? Are you going to have a little party, or what's next after the release, other than doing press junkets?
Well, I'm having a party every day because I do what I love doing so much, and releasing an album of all new music is the biggest gift that any musician can want. There were some performances which unfortunately were canceled due to COVID and so on. We were doing the Howard Shore Concerto in Paris next week, but it's canceled. And but it will all come back. Everything will
Yeah.
come back, and will I very much look forward to that. And I'm just very happy to talk to you. And thank you for saying such nice things about my new album.
And it's a great record. There's no doubt about it. Milos, thank you so much. It's been a
Thank you,
pleasure.
Chris.
All right. Bye bye.